Give me.
Welcome, fans, to another edition of the Old School Shooters podcast. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling, and I'm joined again by the second member of the three-man booth, the MMA Power Hour Impresiaro, the man, Colin Crandall. How are you doing today, Colin?
I'm doing great, Jack. I'm so glad to have our guest here, man. Thank you for introducing me. And now you want to introduce our guest? I can't wait to start talking to him.
I'm going to introduce our guest, and it is my pleasure to introduce a man who is truly a legend in the combat sports industry, not only having helped organize boxing, but also MMA and some of the biggest events in the world of MMA and boxing, and who is now the current site coordinator for Bellator MMA, Mr. Burt Watson.
What's up, baby? How's it going?
Very good, thank you.
Good. Old school. What did you say? Old school? Is that what it is?
Old school shooters. It's a concept and it's a lifestyle. And we'll get into that in a bit. But first, Colin is going to lead off some of the questions that we have for you tonight, sir.
Oh, boy, y'all getting right to it. Let's go, baby.
Absolutely. So, Burt, so much to talk about, man. It's always a pleasure and an honor to talk to you. I think this may be our fourth or fifth time over the last 6 years, and I'm always so grateful to have you here, man.
Yes, sir.
Last week we talked to our mutual friend Stitch Duran. I know you guys have known each other for a couple of decades at least,
right? I think I've known Stitch in combat sports longer than I've known everybody else. Stitch and Leon Tabbs, who is no longer with us.
Right.
But I go back with Stitch to my early days in boxing. And I'm talking about late 70s, early 80s. And I'm now dating myself, but it is what it is, baby.
That's
but
right,
yeah. Stitch is he's always been the man. He's always been the man, one of the best cut men I've ever worked with or that I know of. And, and I say it that way to not to disrespect anybody else in that space, because believe me, I don't think you ever know the importance of a cut man until we see a fight where somebody gets a gash that he can almost put his finger in or something crazy like that. And he's able to go on and finish a round because the cut man did one heck of a job.
Absolutely.
So, kudos to all those guys, baby.
Without a doubt, and big respect to the late Leon Tabbs. I remember that I think he may have jumped into the UFC even a minute before Stitch. I remember they were talking about Cutman, and he was Leon, I think, was older than you and Stitch. He was, like 10, 15 years older than you guys, I think.
Leon Tabbs was, when I started with Joe Frazier, same, late 70s, early 80s. Leon Tabb was the first guy that I met Leon Tabb before I met Joe Frazier.
Oh, wow.
Because I was kind of in and out of various boxing gyms. And here in Philadelphia, there was nobody better than Leon Tabb, and nobody to give you an intro to combat sports or boxing than Leon Tabb. So I met him at that time, and that was when, in Philadelphia we had the old Blue Horizon and Smoking Burt Cooper and Meldrick Taylor, way back. Boogaloo Watts, that's probably a name nobody ever.
I remember him. Boogaloo Watts was one of the guys that I think Marvin Hagler had to fight on the way up, didn't he?
Yes.
He was going through the iron, as they called it over there, right?
Yes, he was. And I had spoken to Leon Tabb, not because I was interested in being a cut man, but I wanted to get some kind of intro into boxing, and just visiting him at the gyms and going to the different gyms and everybody really kind of having a good conversation. He was a good intro for me, and from that point it just shot off from that to Joe Frazier and history.
Absolutely. God bless Leon Tabbs in heaven. for sure.
Yes.
A good man, a
Yes.
legend. And Jack, why don't you throw a question over to our guest, Burt Watson?
Well, Burt, I know you were involved in boxing first, but I
Yes.
wanted to ask you how you got involved in mixed martial arts, and what did you think of it as a concept when you first heard about it?
I was very active in boxing, and I was working with Zab Judah, Cesar Chavez, Don King, the Klitschko brothers, and Sugar Ray Leonard. I had gotten to a point that I was brought in to coordinate those kind of events. And at that time, it was either Atlantic City or Vegas. Those were the two places. If you made it to Atlantic City or Vegas, you made it, okay? In terms of boxing and events and television events, HBO, Showtime, or USA Today. And I had gotten a fight, Arturo Gatti and De La Hoya. And then the next fight that I was going to work was, I think it was Zab Judah and Costa Zoo. Yes. I almost forgot his name.
I love Costa.
So I was working that fight, and there was a local promoter who was actually from New Jersey. And at the time, you called a local promoter because if a promoter was not Don King or Butch Lewis or the Duvers or Cedric Kushner, they weren't promoters. Okay, those guys ran it, and this promoter had found finances and was doing a fight in Vegas. Costa Zoo, Zab Judah. I was there and I was working the fight, and it was the day of the weigh-in that this guy, and his name was Bernie Dillon, he'd called me in and he said, "Listen, man, I got this guy out here that's looking to start this organization, and you know, he's got some plans for some events, and you know, I don't know what it's going to come to. You know, I know what you charge, and I think you can make some money, and I'll introduce you." And I said, "Well, when do you want to do that?" He said, "We'll do it today." I said, "Well, I can't do it today, bro. I got the weigh-in, you know." And he said, "Well, you know, the guy's only got so much time." But at that time, and I can say it now, I said, "Well, this time is my time." Okay. You know, if he wants to see me in between, then we got to make time. So we made time for later on that afternoon to possibly go get a hot dog or something, but just to have a quick conversation. So the guy, Bernie Dillon, had a meeting with the venue, and the venue was the MGM Grand. And he called me in and said, "Listen, man, the guy's going to come here this afternoon, and, you know, we're going to sit and we're going to have a talk." And I said, "Okay." So I went on, met him that afternoon. This guy came in, sat down, and was telling me, you know, about the organization he was starting and what it was all about. And I knew nothing about it, and I'm sitting there and I'm listening to it. And I said to him, "You know what? You pay me and respect me, you got me. Plain and simple. If you disrespect me, I'm gone. If I disrespect you, then we're out of here." And that was it. And that guy was Dana White.
Nice.
And
wow.
That was it. That was the beginning of it. And that was in 99, or no, it was 2000. It was in the year 2000. It was actually in September of 2000. And the first event I did was the following year, February of 2001. I think it was February 23rd was the first event that I did.
You remember any of the fighters that were on that card?
Yes, sir. Tito Ortiz, Evan Tanner, nice. Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture.
Oh man.
BJ Penn made his debut.
Wow.
I think that's probably enough, but it was, you know, and even I think Mark Coleman, but not Mark Coleman, was another young man. And
Mark Kerr, probably Mark Kerr, maybe.
no, but I for Kevin Randleman. That's who I was thinking about.
There we
go. Yeah. I didn't want to say his name wrong because he's no longer with us. Right. But that was my very first, and it just went on from there. And in between those events, I was still doing boxing, right? Because I was connected to Golden Boy, but it wasn't Golden Boy at the time. Right. Oscar De La Hoya had a manager by the name of Raul James, who at the time I knew him, and he wanted me to do their fights. So I did it and did that in Vegas and New Jersey. And then I ran into this guy. As I was working various events, promoters, our world is as small as it is become big, because now it's massive. It's international, it's worldwide. But you know what? We all know each other. So promoters kind of bounced me around. When they wanted a job, they'd call me. So I went from Don King to Duva, yada, 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 and back and forth to different guys. So when I was going back and forth like that, someone introduced me to a guy by the name of Mike Akery, who is also no longer with us, who at the time had Razor Ruddock and a couple of other guys. And he had a show in Florida where he had two guys making their U.S. pro debut. And they were both 6'4" and 6'5" white heavyweights. And that was the Klitschko brothers.
Wow. That's awesome.
And I did their very first that fight they did in Florida. And from that point on, I got to know their people, who said to me, well, listen, if you're not committed or contractually obligated to anybody, we would like you to work some of our events. So I started traveling with them as well. I did Hamburg, Germany. I did London, Dubai, because after the Klitschkos started getting to a point where they started making a name and started really becoming good, then for some reason they left the U.S.
Right.
And all of their fights were outside of the U.S.
Yeah, I remember. Always in
Europe.
Yeah.
So I was traveling, and I was doing their fights and coming back and doing mixed martial arts, and I was going back and forth, but I was having a good time. Yeah. But then it started to conflict a little bit, where the dates started meshing.
Yeah.
But then the mixed martial arts was giving me a date, and it was secure. Boxing, I have actually done a boxing event where I left my house in the airport, sitting in the airport, and see one of the guys. I went from Philly to Texas, I think. And I'm sitting in the airport, and I saw one of the guys that I knew that was working the event was on his way. And so I said, hey, where you going? We can ride together, and he said, no, bro, I'm going home. And I said, what? That's exactly. Yeah. He said they canceled the fight. Oh. And I'm sitting in the airport. But that's how it was back in those days. At the drop of a hat, I would get it. They would cancel a fight. They've canceled a fight at the weigh-in. Oh man! So it finally got to a point where I went where the commitment was solid. Yeah. And for me, it was MMA. And it finally got to a point where the last fight I did with the Klitschkos was also a lead up to Sugar Ray Leonard's last fight. And the guy said, listen, man, we need you when we need you. And I said, and I need you when I need you.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't, you know, if you're gonna give me a fight, then I need to have that happen. Because I depend on that.
Yeah.
So that Klitschko fight was my last fight I did with them, and it was, I think, the O2 Arena in London. And I came back, and I think my last boxing event was Sugar Ray Leonard against Hector Macho Camacho.
Oh, wow.
Macho time.
Oh, yeah. I love Macho time. May he rest in peace. What year was that? Maybe 2003 or 2?
Yes. That was probably, I'd say 2004 or 5, I think, something like that. Right. I'm not 100% sure of the date, but I know that was the last boxing event outside of the Klitschko's that I did, and that's how Sugar Ray Leonard and I became friends. You know, with that, and I mean, Hector Camacho and I were always, you know, I worked most of his fights, so we really became tight. And I used to see him in the gym with his son, who was 7 years old at the time, doing this.
I love it. Yep, I remember that kid
at 7, and was legitimately a good fighter. So, you know, it transitioned to MMA, and when I first started in MMA, coming from a boxing background, things were totally different.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of the production aspect of it, the coordinating aspect of it, in boxing, you know, if a guy was going to fight you, he would fight you, he would fight your mama, he would fight your grandmama, he would fight your uncle, your aunt, or anybody. And he didn't respect you or anybody with you.
Right.
But then when I transitioned to MMA, it was totally different. Yeah. Everybody was respectful of everybody. When they fought, they praised each other, they respected the territory, you know, and it was just a whole different world, first of all, with the people that I met, because they were totally different people. And you know what? I don't care who hears that. Okay. That's just the way it was. In MMA, they were very respectful of each other. They was respectful of camps, you know, and there was never no kerfuffle with fighters and things like that. And I was a little amazed with that. Knew nothing about the sport itself. I knew Bruce Lee and Bruce Leroy.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
That's as much.
That's all you knew about martial arts. Yeah, I love it.
That's as much as I knew about martial arts.
Yep. And Bruce Leroy, for people that don't know, he was a fighter actually the original Bruce Leroy was the character in Barry Gordy's Last Dragon, the only movie Motown ever produced that was a martial arts movie in the 80s. Yep. That was Bruce Leroy, and the original Bruce Lee. Yep.
Yes, Bruce Leroy, and that was probably one of my favorite movies with the.
Yes, I love that. You know, I love that too. Man. Remember Vanity was in that? How beautiful she was.
Man, it was that movie that made me start martial arts.
Nice.
That's when I started. I found a school here in Philadelphia, and in between my time, I was going and ironically got into martial arts, you know, and it was a transition to see guys go in from fighting and boxing who were technically skilled and jabs and punches were right on and bobbing and weaving, to see guys that really didn't know how, because when I got into MMA,
right, they didn't have much hands.
Didn't nobody know how to box. Okay, they called it stand up, but it should have been called laying down.
Right,
because
trying to get to the ground.
Yes, there was nothing. There was no skills. There was nothing, and they were hitting each other with the elbows, and you know. But then me taking martial arts classes, I understood that, but it was such a different world for me.
Yeah.
And in 2002, 2003. I wouldn't say they were fighting like this.
Right.
But believe me, they were not boxers. There was
not much better.
There was no technical skills in the stand-up.
No,
and
right.
eventually, as time went on, between 2003 and 2008, that started to change.
Yeah.
This started turning into this.
Yep.
And they started becoming boxers. And then they got to a point with Nate Diaz with the hands down.
Yep. And Anderson Silva,
yes.
right, too. Yep.
Oh, Anderson. And what amazed me, and I was going to say that out of all of the MMA fighters that I saw, the most technically sound in terms of boxing that I saw was Anderson Silva.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but he didn't use that in a technical way, if that makes sense. He was always joking with it.
Right.
He was always joking with it. When you came to him, he would snap that jab out there. Yep. He would snap that jab. He would snap that jab and take you down.
Yeah.
But he was good. And I mean, he has since gotten into boxing full time regularly, but he was back then he was sound, and I saw it, said, that boy can fight. Can really.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a transition from boxing to MMA, the people, but everything else was the same. As a coordinator, everything else was the same. Everybody, and I've always been very fortunate for people to give me a job and get out of the way.
Yep. That's all you need to do. Go ahead.
Oh man, it's important that somebody allows you to do that, but you also have to know what you're doing for somebody to do that with you.
Yes. And I think that's what being old school kind of is, right? Like back in the day, right, you brought your abilities and you brought your promise to get the job done, and all someone had to do was say, here's what you need to do, and I will get out of your way out of respect for that you know what you're doing, and then the man would do it. And it was a very simple equation, being old school. And I think as years have gone by in the world, not just this country, in the world, there's all kinds of confusion. Everything's muddled up. One guy says, well, you didn't tell me what to do. The other guy says, well, you told me you could take care of it. And then the other guys, but then you got guys looking over my shoulder that are pissing me off. And then the other guys, because you were late on your commitment. And it's like the old school honor and respect and communication. Is I think has faded a little bit. And I think back in the day, and with guys all of our age, like we remember when that's all that what it was. If you were hiring someone, you said, here's what I want. I'm going to let you do your thing. The other guy did his thing and did it good. And it was simple. And I think now with the younger generation, it's a little bit more muddled, isn't it? Well, everybody wants to get paid and get out of there. Yeah. Everybody wants to get paid and go home. And everybody relies on their skill level, which they should, but you got to embrace the moment. And you can't insult your training and insult your teachings. And today, because of the fact that guys have gotten technically better and more skilled, it covers up a lot of other things. Because now today, everybody can fight. Yeah. They all can fight. We get to, when I say we, myself as a coordinator and you guys as journalists, get to criticize and critique people. But if you think about it, you're not going to criticize and critique somebody that's awful. Right. Okay? You're not going to have a conversation about somebody that's just pure D-S-H-I-T. Right. But you can have a conversation about the whole genre and everybody in it, and it makes sense because everybody can fight. They all can go, and they all can. And I think one of the best things that happened to me was that my second boxing event that I did was televised. Oh, wow. On the old USA network. I remember it. Tuesday night fight. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Brad
Al
Jacobs.
Albert and the champ, Sean O'Grady.
Yes, yes, sir. And with that, I learned a lot about the production side of it, the lighting aspect, the production, the directions, and I learned how to make what I did in the back fit with what they wanted on the screen, because they came at me to do that without telling me or without asking me.
Right.
But they didn't come at me because I'm a hood rat from Philly.
Right.
So
Yep.
the minute somebody got here, baby, I got back at them.
Oh, yeah.
So they were a little careful, but I learned so much in that time frame, and I'm glad I did, because it had legs, and the legs are now tentacles.
Yep.
Because the production aspect of MMA today, with Bellator and being on Showtime and all the major networks, it's intense.
Yeah.
What they have to do behind the scenes or backstage to make that thing television ready.
Yeah.
And I learned how to do that, and I'm knocking on wood that I did, because it paid off, because when it jumped real quick for me. It went from USA to HBO and Showtime real quick. And I had to be ready, but I was ready. I was ready for it, but it was definitely something I will never forget, or something I will always be happy that I did take advantage of, because now, the production that you guys are getting now on these events are unbelievable.
Very polished.
Yes, sir. 100%.
Yeah, without a doubt. A lot more goes into it than people would imagine, I'm sure.
More than they can. The backstage with the dressing rooms and the workout areas. When a fighter arrives at an event, he has to have a comfort level.
Yeah.
Because they already come there on edge, because they're cutting weight.
Yep.
And when they're cutting weight, they're three different people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So they have to come into an environment that has to put them at a comfort level, and it has to be prepared to help them with what they need to do.
Yeah.
With a scale that's certified, a scale that's good, the right workout room, mats, the right, facilities, the room being a certain temperature, all those things, because those things transition into them stepping on the scale for the weigh-in.
Yeah.
Because when they step on that scale for the weigh-in, it's fight night.
Yeah, that's it. That's their first fight, essentially.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And it's all live and in living color.
Without a doubt. I know Jack's got some more questions, but let me just ask you a real quick one. Give me a quick answer on this one, Burt.
Mm-hmm.
Even though everything was reliable with the MMA bookings, when they put on an event, they did it. There was no problems. Were you a believer early on? Because in those days, early 2000, UFC was bleeding out money.
Right.
They weren't making all kinds of millions. Were you a believer as far as that this sport would catch on? And if you were, was it a 10 out of 10, a 7 out of 10, a 5 out of 10? How much a believer were you that this sport was going to actually get somewhere?
I wasn't very much a believer, but I was hoping it did, because I was putting all in.
Right. Yep. That's not
and that's just the way it was. And it went from show to show, and I became a believer when I saw the consistency.
Right.
And I saw the interest of the bigger networks. When the bigger networks got interested, I knew there were legs there.
Yep. Like finally when they started talking about our sport, because people that don't know, up until maybe like 2005, they wouldn't even talk about our sport. ESPN, no sports news, nothing. It was like we didn't exist. You couldn't see a billboard anywhere. You couldn't see an article in any newspaper, online, nothing. And when that started to happen, that makes sense. That you could see that it was gonna take off. Makes sense.
I can't tell you how many times I got called a sellout. Okay.
Well, the boxing community.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I was making a mistake, you know, and I would say, well, then if I'm making a mistake, hire me, give me a job.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yep.
So that was kind of the end of that conversation, but I heard it an awful lot, and I heard it from some media guys, you know, and it was, but I was good because as long as they're talking about you, you good.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think now boxing respects MMA more. Those early days, they were trying to say that's just a fringe, crazy sport. It's not even legit, this and that. And I think now they see that we are here to stay. We've been here for 30 years now, the big 30. And you know, we're definitely an entity in combat sports. Jack, I know you got something for Burt.
Well, Burt, I just wanted to ask you, given your tenure in the industry, the MMA industry, how do you think it's changed both positively and negatively, and not just in terms of production, but in overall presentation, the action in the ring, all aspects?
I think number one, I think it has changed because the athletes have become better, have become more technically sound, more technically skilled, more well-rounded. It is now truly mixed martial arts with grappling and stand-up and takedowns, you know, and submission. It went to all those four variations when before it wasn't. And it started to take a life of his own, and it became more fan friendly. And I'm saddened today to see where boxing has gone, because that's where I came from. Right. And not saying that it's not there anymore, but it is not nearly as big as it used to be in terms of comparison to MMA. Yeah. So from a standpoint of the technical skill level, the athletes, and in every sport, athletes today are unbelievable. Yep. Unbelievable the way the athletes are today.
Yeah, without a doubt. And Jack, did you have a part two of that question, I think?
Well, just you touched upon boxing and the way that business has gone. What are your thoughts in terms of these spectacle events, the celebrity boxing phenomenon, such as Mr. Paul and others? And how do you feel that fits into your premise there a moment ago?
Well, it one thing that it has done is that it has kept the eyes on boxing. And now, I'm not sad to say it, I'll say it. Boxing needed something to revitalize it a bit. And I think that this thing with Jake Paul and the things that they're doing with the celebrities, you know what? It's kept eyes on them. It's kept eyes on boxing. And for whatever, he has become a legitimate athlete. And his brother has become a legitimate athlete. But for the sake of entertainment, because that's what combat sports is, entertainment, for the sense of entertainment, whatever brings the entertainment value to it, I'm all for it. Plain and simple. As long as they're not out there fighting with a red nose and as long as they're not out there fighting with a red nose and a wig on, okay, I'm good.
Right, exactly. Absolutely. Now, I would imagine you're not down probably for the power slap organization, as most of us are not, or are you? What's your feeling on that craziness that Dana's got going?
I've watched it, and not his organization, but I've watched it because I saw it coming along and I saw it coming up, and if I ever thought anything would, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but I don't give a damn. If I ever thought anything was dangerous, I think that is. Yeah. Because there is no protection on the hand. There's no protection on the face. I don't think they even wear a mouthpiece. And I've seen them make a joke out of people getting knocked out and getting up. Yeah. And I'm not enjoying that. Plain and simple.
Oh. Yeah, I agree, because a lot of people don't know unlike when a woman slaps someone and just half of her hand gets in on it and she weighs 110 pounds, it's no fun being slapped by a woman, but it's not going to be that bad. But when you have a man who's 200, 300 pounds, and just like Boss Rutan always says, using the heel of your palm, getting in there, that's hard, and coming in there like that, that's dangerous. So there's a lot of impact as we see, and to not have any protection, and it's, go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know how skilled these guys are, but they don't use this. They use the whole hand, the whole force and rotation of the body.
Yeah.
They go from back here all the way around. So you don't need to know how to do this.
Right.
And that's are the guys that are doing that, they're skilled in what?
Right.
And I don't know enough about it right now to really critique it, although I have already. but no, I'm not enjoying that. I'm not enjoying watching it at all.
I agree, and I think that probably will go away soon. And it's kind of ironic that Dana White then gets slapped by his wife, and then he slaps her, and then now you got a power slap. And although if that was a promotion, if that turned out to be a fake, because my man Jack here was involved in professional wrestling, and this originally was a pro wrestling channel out of Canada, and so we understand that kayfabe or kayfabe. But if that was that, then that sure backfired. And I think people are even less happy to see that. But people are always going to try something. And, Dana's a colorful character. Let me ask you this real quick. Burt, Dana is 53 years old, I think. He's been doing what he does for 23 years now, from when he was 30 to 53. Now, my thought is he's not going to want to do this in his 60s, I'm pretty sure. So that would mean maybe 7 more years. If you had to predict, would you think somewhere in the next 7 years he's stepping down, or 2 years, or 5 years, or you think he's going to try to push it to the limit and be doing this when he's 65, 70?
Well, for somebody who's 74 years old,
right, yep,
and still rolling,
you look amazing. It's fantastic.
It's. I think that it's a financial situation where, as long as you're making money and you're not losing a ton of money, you keep going.
Yeah.
And your body tells you when it's ready to go very easily. I mean, that I know for a fact. So as long as your body says go and that money says go, he'll be there. Yeah. He'll be there. There's no reason. And there are so many people right now that actually coordinate and put those things together, that people at that level just have to walk in and sit in a chair.
Yeah, it's not brain surgery.
Even at because of the fact that there's so many, and I see it in Bellator, because of the fact that there's so many fights in Bellator and going on, that those things are planned out so far ahead, and there is such a system in place that it just goes on, and it just goes on. All you have to do is stay within that system.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to give it another 5 years at least.
Yeah. I know it. I know you can. I know you can. We need you there, man. People don't want you to leave. Hey, one of our viewers pointed out that the slap league they do have some kind of mouthpiece and something in their ear, but still, it's still very dangerous and pretty crazy, and most people will see that. Jack, you had another question, I think, for Burt.
Yes, I do. As Colin alluded to, the channel Hannibal TV started off, primarily as a pro wrestling channel, and I find the topic of pro wrestlers who have transitioned to MMA, and I'm thinking not only of Brock Lesnar, but for Bellator, Jake Hager and the great Bobby Lashley, and then fighters,
my man,
that have done the reverse. Dating back to Dan the Beast Severn. What's your thoughts on the level of skill and ingenuity that it takes to do that, crossing either side of the perspective, and being so competent in it as all of those men that I've mentioned are.
What you just said, number one is the confidence, and number two is the personality. Case in point, Matt Riddle. I had Matt Riddle in MMA when he was just about on the border.
Yep.
Right now he's one of their superstars. You know, and it was that MMA background and his agility as an athlete, and he had that very same. I don't know if I'm a pro wrestling fan. Okay, I watch it as much as I can, and he always had that personality. He was always technically sound, but everybody else was maybe at another level, and they overmatched him a lot. Ronda Rousey, same thing, had the personality and went in there with the skill level, and you know, those two combinations took them on. So, and I'm always happy when I see my kids, I call them my kids, transitioning into something else to keep them busy, because athletes don't know when to quit.
Yeah.
Okay. But if they can transition into something that is almost or basically the same as what they were doing, that they just use their skill levels to maintain, I agree with it, and I don't see any problem with them transitioning into that, especially pro wrestling, because it just takes a personality. Now I know they got to practice jumping off the top of that damn rope, okay, and jumping on tables and jumping off somebody's and hitting their legs without breaking something in here, but they learn how to do that. They got schools, and I've been to the school. I think it's in Paulsboro, New Jersey. There used to be one. So, yeah, I like that.
Good stuff.
And what do you think the odds would be of ever getting an MMA fight between, as I said before, Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar? I know they're doing it over in WWE, but a lot of fans are saying, give us that in the cage, in the octagon.
Anything that can sell pay-per-view could and will happen. Plain and simple. Especially when it comes to sports and athletics. If they can put it together and a pay-per-view entity accepts it, it could happen. And Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley, I mean, they're both at the top of their game. Brock is a superstar, and Bobby's in there. And you know what? They both have the same skill levels, the same strength. I could definitely see that happening. Definitely. And I don't pay for pay-per-view. Not that I steal it.
Right, no, of course not.
but I don't, you know, I get my information from you guys, and I get the replays because I see enough of it.
Totally.
And I'm usually working.
Definitely. I know you and Stitch are working and flying, more frequent flyers than anyone else I know. And that's amazing. God bless you. Let me ask you, a couple of the guys that our MMA community lost in the last several months, Stephan Bonner and Anthony Rumble Johnson. Can you share any memories you had with those gentlemen? I know you were there right in their heyday. Yeah,
they were. I was pretty close to both of them. Wow.
Yeah.
You got me with that one. Doggone your soul. But Stephan Bonner, you know, my memories of him was always trying to make sure that he did what he needed to do, because he always had to do something else instead of what he needed to do.
Did he? God bless him. He was a unique guy, wasn't he?
You know, and I was always behind him. You know, you got to get this. You got to get this, you know, and okay. And I'd walk past him and he'd be doing something else. And I'm looking at him. What the heck are you and he'd scurry on.
Yeah.
But I will say that I saw him maybe 3 years ago, and I know he was not doing well, and that was disheartening.
Yeah.
And I always thought somebody should have given him some kind, because he had a good personality. He was very smart, and he knew what he was talking about. He was a little crazy,
Yep.
but that's television, and somebody should have, but they didn't. And Rumble Johnson, again, one of my kids. That kid was. I remember a quick story that he always had problems with weight.
Yep. Oh,
but he always
trying to make 170s, man.
Oh, always. And I remember doing a show with him in London, and he cut all that weight, and then he was rehydrating, and he got what they call electropedia shock.
Ooh.
Where he was like this, stiff, and couldn't move. And I went to his room, and he was just laying there, and his tears in his eyes, man, coming down his face, because he didn't know what it was, but the doctor knew what it was. And they had to revive him and help him, but he couldn't. They were not going to go and let him fight after that. He was all right, but then, deciding on the side of caution, they decided not to let him fight. But he was also a good kid and a good person.
Yeah.
In my career, and I won't say his name, but I've only had a disagreement with one fighter in my 35 years of combat sports.
Yeah.
One.
Amazing.
And he's in jail.
There you go. Yep. Oh, yeah. That helps for the hardcore people. We're not going to mention any names, but at least that gives a hint to the hardcore fans.
So now all you got to do is Google.
Exactly. Start Googling him. Yep.
Who's in jail?
Yep. There you go. But that is amazing, man. Because even with the great martial arts attitude that people have, to only have one problem with one person in 35 years is amazing. And but no, both those men were great guys. I actually had nowhere near as much contact as you had with both of them. I interviewed Stephan Bonner on 2 or 3 times with our mutual friend Matthew Granahan, and he and I both had the same birthday, April 4th. And
wow.
But a very, very unique guy and very talented, very charismatic. Matthew Granahan actually has a book they were writing together. And I think Matthew did a 1 hour and change YouTube of him reading the book. And you could hear, if you knew Stephan Bonner, you could hear his voice talking about his life. And so that's a really good thing to check out. American Psycho.
Yeah.
He was amazing.
Yeah.
And then with Anthony Rumble Johnson, I got to interview him once in person. And one interesting thing that I noticed about him was he was a very big guy, very powerful guy. But the vibe I got from him was so mellow. Like literally, I had no, not that you have to fear people attacking me, but I really honestly felt like it wouldn't have mattered if I would have stepped on his foot by accident.
Yeah, he was a wuss.
He wasn't good. Yeah, he wasn't good at, he was just a mellow, friendly, good-hearted guy that the only time he was hurting anyone was when it was in the cage, and that was his job. So
it's like I said, in my 35, 40, whatever years it is, I'm one person. I always considered all of them as my children.
Yep.
Randy Couture, Tito, everybody,
yep.
Even the ladies, it was, I remember getting real close to Amanda Nunes when she first came in.
Nice.
And first putting her on the scale, and now, Kat Zingano,
The Cyborg, right?
And I work and Cyborg. I'll probably see her this weekend. She may be at the event because Bellator's got Bellator 290 in LA this weekend, so she might be there, but. has not changed. It's still the same young lady that I met years ago. And it's just that I can still call them young people.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I
uh,
can relate compared to me, too. You know, man,
yes.
I think that they didn't have that second Nunes Cyborg fight on purpose. I think everyone knew Cyborg would have made some adjustments. She would have not gone in there as overconfident as she did, and I think that could have been either a Cyborg win or it would have been a war. And I feel like UFC didn't want to risk that. I feel like UFC said, we got our girl. She's a company woman, Amanda Nunes, Cyborg. We have frustration with, and we don't want to take a risk. But that was unfortunate, wasn't it? Because everyone wanted to see that. And I wouldn't say that Amanda Nunes, I don't think, was scared of that fight by any means. But I think she probably knew that she got one on Cyborg quick, but it wasn't going to go that way in the second fight.
I never saw fear on any fighter until I got him in the holding area.
Right. There you go. Yep.
And that's when I saw eye to eye with everybody. And just the way they breathe on you and what they say to you before they walk away from you. But I think not only that, but I'm sure, especially in today's world, and I say today's world, I'm talking maybe as of 5 years ago, money had a big part to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I don't want to forget one Bellator fighter that's gone. I don't know if you got to see him because I think he might have left Bellator by the time you got there. But you remember Jordan Young over in Bellator?
Yes.
Big man, yeah. He died a year before these other people, but still, yes. This was a man who was on the upswing. He had just had a very big win over in PFL, and he had a tremendous amount of potential. And what memory do you have of the big man Jordan Young?
He was, they were all wusses. They were all kids, and that thing switched on when they got in that cage. But other than that, he had a big heart. He was always joyful and did some strange things, but you know what? He was a fighter.
Yep.
And we're talking Jordan, Stephen, Anthony, and Evan Tanner.
And Evan Tanner, God bless him.
Those are the only guys. I mean, those guys that they all hit me.
Yeah.
One way or another. The other three more than Jordan because I worked with them a little closer, but
right.
It's gone too soon. And when and you work with athletes and you know how well they take care of themselves and their bodies and their conditioning and the food they eat and all that. And then, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is gone too soon. Well, Burt,
yes,
we want to go maybe 5 more minutes, so we're going to try to think of the best questions we can. I appreciate you, Jack. If you have anything more, you want me to jump in? If not, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to mention the book that you alluded to, the King's book with Bonner, and called Chaotic Enlightenment, and that 1 hour read is available on the Hannibal TV. So anyone that's watching,
it's available now.
It's available on a read, a 1 hour plus read by Matt. So check it out. It's well worth your time.
Wow. Yeah. Yes, I will.
Very cool. And then now we got Phil Baroni in trouble. He's not dead, fortunately, but the trouble he's in over there. He was a character. And anyone's gonna assume everyone's innocent until found guilty.
Yeah.
So hopefully he did not kill anyone. But assuming that he maybe did not, any good memory of Phil Baroni? He was a unique dude. Huh?
Phil again. The New York badass. And maybe I shouldn't say that now with the trouble that he's in, but I would have never seen that.
Yeah.
And I've never seen that side of him. And I've seen him in fight mode and when he wasn't. but I never saw that side of that person, whoever that person was. And I saw him maybe 4 years ago. I did an event with him, and Johnny Stevenson, is it Johnny?
Was it?
Phil was on the card, and I think it was a bare knuckle thing.
Oh wow!
That I worked with Phil, but he was also one of my guys.
Yeah, I heard he didn't really give anyone any trouble. He was just a colorful guy. Charismatic guy. Yeah. Speaking about bare knuckles, I like that. I'm down with bare knuckles. How about you? Are you on the edge, or where are you at as far as your thoughts about bare knuckles? I think it's pretty cool.
I work bare knuckle, so I've done maybe 4 or 5 events. With BYB in Florida. And again, I'm always happy to see a place for fighters to go to transition, because fighters and athletes don't know when to quit.
Right.
And not that going to bare knuckle is that, but I saw Chris Lieben, who MMA was done with Chris.
Right.
And I saw him go to bare knuckle, and there's a couple of other guys that I knew from MMA that I've seen in bare knuckle. And
Lieben fought Phil. Sorry to interrupt you, Burt. Lieben fought Phil Baroni, I think, didn't he? But go ahead.
Yes. And you know what? When I first started with MMA, 4-ounce gloves was worse than bare knuckle.
Right. Yep.
To leave it up to the critics and everybody, they're not 8-ounce gloves, they're not 10-ounce gloves, they're 4-ounce gloves. That's barbaric.
Right. Right. And now we got the bare knuckles, which I like. I think Chris Lytle does an amazing job. Former UFC. You probably any memory of Chris Lytle? He's killing it over as a commentator at BKFC. Chris was always a pretty cool dude to work with, I'm sure.
Yes, and he is in the space that he needed to be, because that's the person that he was. Chris always paid attention, and he always. Every time I saw Chris, I prepared for a 15 or 20-minute conversation, because I know it wasn't going to be quick, because he had a lot to say and he knew how to say it.
Yep.
So I can absolutely see that transition where he is right now, and I'm happy for him, and he's killing it.
Yeah, he is. We had him on this show. In fact, I think the first episode of Old School Shooters, a couple months back, we did have Chris Lytle. Wow. Yeah, so far it's been Chris and you and Stitch. We're getting all the best out of the way first. What our goal is. And
lights out. Chris lights out Lytle.
Amazing. He would win fight of the night bonuses like they were going out of style, remember?
Yeah. You know what? And came back in the room and took his and took his hand wraps off and wanted to sit down and talk about it.
I love it. Yeah, great communicator, great guy, really good guy. Yeah. Well, last thing real quick before we let you go, I think Jack might have one thing. I have one thing. You want to go first real quick, Jack?
I'm good.
Well, yeah, just before we end, on this podcast, given the name Old School Shooters, we like to ask the guests what that means to you to be old school in concept, lifestyle, or anything pertinent that in your life relates to that you still carry in these chaotic times.
Longevity and experience, and all the good memories that I have, and to be able to sit with guys like yourself, old school, and talk about old school and things that a lot of people don't experience or don't go through. It's the longevity and the experience of it, and I think it's awesome. Especially to have that name, Old School Shooters. It says everything. So that says to me, when I'm going to listen to you guys, I'm going to get an education about something.
I appreciate it. That's an honor that you would say that, because usually when I'm talking to you, it's the reverse. We will get an education from you. But I appreciate that. I'm going to sneak in the last couple of things here really quickly, and I'll wrap it up.
Yes, sir.
Francis Ngannou, will a big boxing match happen with him? Will it be with Tyson Fury or will it be with someone else? A, and B, will his skills give him a chance in that fight?
I didn't think it had a chance until I heard Tyson Fury mention it. Because Tyson Fury is the man at the heavyweight division, and he usually gets what he wants. Put the money up and make it happen. I think a lot of people underestimate Tyson Fury because that man can fight.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like it,
Right.
but he can. And I've I haven't seen a lot of Francis's skills or his ability to take a punch because Tyson's got two of them.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be a question. But would that happen? Like I said, if anybody can bring an ID to pay-per-view today, it happens.
Yeah. And Fury threw out that he could do it in a cage with 4-ounce gloves, but with boxing rules. And so, in all honesty, I don't see that changing things too much unless maybe that Francis can push his back against the cage. Although 4-ounce gloves. Last question on that: would 4-ounce gloves in a boxing match between Ngannou and Fury favor one or the other? Which one, or neither one? Would you say
it would favor the boxer puncher, without a doubt, because normally 4-ounce gloves, guys are used not to necessarily close fist to hit because they're gonna hit and grab.
Yeah.
So you know how Nate slaps? It's not always a slap, but the punch is not as solid as a guy who punches and knows how to punch. And the less padding he has, that's why heavyweights fight with 10-ounce gloves and not 8-ounce gloves.
Yep.
So now you're going to take a heavyweight that fights with sometimes 12, 10-ounce gloves and put 4-ounce gloves on him? Yeah. Figure that one out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I appreciate that. Burt, you're over at Bellator. Bellator's next event coming up is February 4th. You want to tell us where that is, how people can see it? That'd be great.
February 4th, LA, and it'll be on Showtime. And most of Bellator's fights are on Showtime, and I can tell you, they are definitely some awesome, awesome fights. And this one is Fedor against Ryan Bader. You got Johnny Eblen. It's going to be off the chain. And I think I'm not 100%. I don't want to say it, but I don't know whether this is Fedor's last fight or not.
I think they're saying it is.
But it's something you should not miss. Bellator 290, baby. Fantastic. In the house.
Absolutely. Burt Watson, what's the best social media place people can support you?
I love it. Burt Watson for real. Burt Watson, the number 4 real. That's on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. And if you get to me on Instagram or Twitter, I will get back to you.
I appreciate that. I'm going to let my man Jack wrap it up. But from me to you, Burt, thank you so much, man. So grateful you came on. It's been a pleasure and an honor as always.
Pleasure's mine, baby.
Thank you. Jack, throw it to you.
Yes, thanks, Burt, for being so generous with your time and educating all of us out there. It's greatly appreciated. Fans, that's it for another edition of the Old School Shooters podcast.
Old School Shooters podcast, baby. Stick with it.
I love that. We might have to use that as the tagline, but for now, the tagline is Silver Sages spreading wisdom to the younger ages. Take care, everybody.
All night long. Boom.
Peace.